Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network, and you're listening to the Indianapolis 500 betting preview here on Running Hot. Before we get into the picks, I do want to let you know I will be joined later in the show by Mike of Burnout Bets, who will take us through turn 2, and Dale Tanhardt of the Garage Guys, who will lead us into turn 3. Very excited to have those guests with us for this special episode of Running Hot. The Indy 500 is the biggest motorsports event in the world. Indianapolis Motor Speedway is a 2.5-mile oval with relatively flat banking in the corners at just 9.2 degrees. IMS is shaped like a rectangle with rounded 90-degree turns, and because of that, because of its size, 2.5 miles, we have two very long straightaways where Indy cars can get up over 240 miles an hour at the end of these long straightaways. That's because of the draft, or tow, as we call it in IndyCar parlance, and that is going to have a huge role in how the race will play out. It means cars will be able to stay together in a line, and they could use the draft to their advantage to make a slingshot pass for the win, potentially. In addition, Goodyear has brought a bit of a softer left side tire this year, meaning tires are wearing out quicker. Thus, tire management will be key, and race day should be kind of hot. The forecast, long-term forecast right now, looks to be just north of 80 degrees. So will be a hot, sunny day. Tire management absolutely will be very key. That means it should be a fun race. We're going to have some comers and some goers. Expect, like I said, those slingshot passes for the lead. This is going to be a very interesting race because, if you can manage your tires, you can move through the field. And then once you're at the front of the field, that clean air with only one or two cars in front of you, you will be able to make those slingshot passes. So I do think this is going to be a very, very interesting year, maybe a little different than we've seen in years past, thanks to some of these parts and pieces. I mean, speaking of parts and pieces, IndyCar has given teams the ability to add more parts and pieces to the car to do some different aerodynamic things, mostly increasing the downforce. And what that's doing is that by increasing the downforce, you're also increasing the drag, blowing a bigger hole into the air and making the draft a little bit bigger. And with the added downforce, it has allowed these cars to run a little bit closer together as well. So maybe we see a few more crashes this year. It could be a high variance race. And when that happens, there's always the opportunity to take some long shots. So with that said, that is our preview for the Indianapolis 500 in terms of what to expect. So that means we need to get into the bets. So I will lead us into turn 1 here with a pair of matchups. For matchup number 1, I'm going to go with the race favorite at most books, Alex Palou, minus 135 over Pato O'Ward. Alex Palou is the race favorite. He is my race favorite in terms of a handicap. He has the car to beat. I kind of noticed all the way back in April, in the April test, the open test here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, that he looked like the car to beat. He was incredibly happy with his car. And one thing you'll notice about IndyCar racing, at the Indy 500 especially, practice times can be very misleading because of the draft, right? If a guy just gets a really big draft, he may not actually have a great race car. He just got a really big draft in practice. So it is very important to listen to driver talk. What are the drivers saying? What are the teams saying about their car? And Alex Palou absolutely loves his race car. He also I did say, practice times aren't super important, but you can kind of smooth all that out by looking at longer average speed. He did post the best 10-lap average on the Monday session, which of course came after he won the pole position this past weekend. So he is starting on pole. He has the fastest 10-lap average in post-qualifying practice. He loves his race car, and the matchup is against Pato O'Ward. Now, Pato O'Ward is a very good IndyCar driver at all the tracks, very good at the ovals, but he has not been as happy with his car so far in the month of May. They've struggled mainly with consistency. They struggled last week before qualifying. They didn't qualify quite as well as they would have liked to have, although they did, still make the fast 12. But Pato O'Ward on this Monday practice really was not happy with his car. He said it was very inconsistent. You put on one set of tires, it would do one thing. You put on another set of tires, it would do another thing. That's not ideal. You don't want an inconsistent race car on race day. So for matchup bet number one, I am taking Alex Palou minus 135 over Pato O'Ward. And for the second matchup here in this turn one, I am going to go with Simon Pagenaud minus 110 over Romain Grosjean. Now, this matchup is interesting. This is between two Honda drivers. Romain Grosjean races for Andretti Autosport, and Simon Pagenaud races for Meyer-Shank Racing. But Meyer-Shank Racing has a technical alliance with Andretti Autosport. So they've been, even though their cars are prepped differently, they've been sharing technical data with each other. And what that has done is that's put all of these Andretti and Meyer-Shank cars kind of very close together in speed. They all qualified very near each other. But the difference here is these guys track history. Simon Pagenaud is a legend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He has finished inside the top 8 in 4 of his last 5 races here, and that does include a win. So Simon Pagenaud has won here. Yes, it was with Team Penske, a Chevy team, but now he's over at Honda. But he did still finish 8th in this car, in this Meyer-Shank Racing car last year, well ahead of Romain Grosjean, who that was his only Indy 500 career start. And just listening to them talking about it as well, Simon certainly feels more comfortable in his car than Romain Grosjean does this weekend, I should say this whole month of May. So for matchup bet number 2 here in turn 1, Simon Pagenaud minus 110 over Romain Grosjean. So that does it for turn 1. Now it's going to time to go into turn 2. All right, for turn 2, please welcome Mike from Burnout Bets. Mike is one half of the Burnout Bets duo that does host Twitter Spaces to talk betting for the IndyCar series, along with Tony Donahue for all of the IndyCar races. Mike is one of my favorite IndyCar betting experts to follow on Twitter. You can follow him on Twitter at Indy_bet. Mike, it's the Indy 500. It's the biggest race in the world. It's so exciting. How are you doing, and what do you expect from this year's Indy 500?
Oh man, I am super excited. This is the Super Bowl for IndyCar betting. We spend most of the IndyCar season refreshing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, hoping to get some matchups, some odds. But this is actually the one race that sports books around the world pay attention to IndyCar, man. So I am just super psyched. We're gonna get some prop bets that we never get. We're going to hopefully get some more matchups. We got a bigger odds board across the industry to look at. So I'm just psyched to be able to have, just more stuff at our fingertips to bet. And hopefully we get some more people betting IndyCar and watching the greatest race.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited for it. This is several years now into this current chassis, this aero kit. So things might be a little different this year. They've added some extra parts and pieces, maybe to create some more downforce. Some drivers are saying the draft will be bigger. There'll be more passing than the past couple of years. How are you kind of reading in all of that into, handicapping this race?
Yeah, look, that's the beauty of IndyCar is the sports books don't pay as much attention as we do.
Yeah.
The guys that are really, they're really following the practices and listening to what the drivers have to say. So there's definitely edges and angles for us to find here. Most of the drivers, I've heard that they've been talking about passing at the front, but not in the middle and the back of the pack. So I look for you guys are always, it's a long race, 500 miles. Every year something crazy always happened. Last year, Dixon was just running away with the thing. Fastest car on the pole. He speeds in pit lane, like one of the greatest drivers all time. And then poof, that's it. He's done. And then we watched Marcus Ericsson outduel Award for the win. So crazy stuff happens over 500 miles. I expect there to be passing. I don't expect to be like Texas level passing where we're talking hundreds of passes for the race. But you better guarantee 230 miles an hour. They'll be slicing and dicing at the end of that race and throughout the race.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a fantastic race, and, weather looks perfect. So we're not going to have to worry about rainouts or anything like that as far as the extended forecast. So let's talk bets. Mike, I know you bet on every IndyCar race, or at least look at betting at every IndyCar race. Sometimes there's just not always great odds out there, but I know you've got some bets for the Indy 500. Lead us off here in turn 2 with your favorite bet so far that you've seen for the Indy 500.
Yeah, so you heard me talk about earlier, we don't get prop bets for IndyCar very rarely. Usually we get We get a twin odds board. We get sometimes top three. Some sports books offer top three, top five, and you'll get a spattering of matchups here, 3, 4, 5 matchups. We haven't seen any matchups come out yet from any books. You follow me on Twitter. I'll be posting anything I see on matchups from different books, and follow along with those. Anything I like, that's where you can kind of pick off the end of the field. But look, my absolute favorite bet every year for the 500. Knock on wood, ever since I've seen IndyCar betting available, this is an undefeated bet. You have to go back to 2016 before you see a driver not in the top 9 grid positions, starting positions, win the race. So there's a prop bet. I've seen it on a couple books already. It's usually across all books out there. That's going to say usually 8.5 or 9.5, the driver to come under that in the grid position. So the last, like I said, 6 years in a row that's hit. That is my absolute favorite bet when it comes to Indy 500, under on the starting grid position. If you can get to 9.5, if you can get a 10, because TK sits in 10, we'll talk about that maybe in a second here. That's even better. But that is my absolute favorite bet. I've seen it at -115. I think it's fair all the way up to -150. Like I said, 6 years in a row with the new car, the new chassis. You just with the speed, you just don't see that coming out here. So that's number one on my list. Right now, we pretty much only have to win markets out. There's some top 3, some top 5 popping up. I like to kind of split my bet usually in the IndyCar in the season. If I have a winner, I'll take a top 3 with that, or a top 5. Indy 500 is a little bit different. It depends also. You have pre-qualifications, bets, and after. But looking just at the board right now, look, my favorites. I think Palou is a worthy favorite. I had him for the pole. He starts in the pole, and he's being offered anywhere 6, 7 to 1. I believe it's 6 to 1 on BetMGM last I checked. Some places 7, 8. So I think that's a very fair number for him. I wouldn't mind betting that. Last year, Dixon went off about 3 to 1 or so off the pole. So you're getting double that on a Ganassi car that's been fast. My next guy is Pato O'Ward. I grabbed him on at 8 to 1 before he put it in the top 6. So he's a guy that I think has been fast at Texas, which is a good, if you're a golf guy, comp course is a comp track, Texas Speedway. Award, could have won that race. He was dealing with Joseph all race. So Palou, Award, and then I think Dixon is live as well. Dixon's another guy you can get out at a pretty decent number, 8 to 9 to 1 range. So those are probably my 3 favorites. I don't expect much from VK or Rosenquist, who start in the front row. They just haven't had good race day cars. They weren't strong in the final practice today. But like I said, I think the winner comes from the top 9 cars. That's why it's my favorite bet. And those are a couple guys. I think you can't go wrong with a Sato. And even if you want to maybe cover yourself on that top 9.5 bet, Tony Kanaan is sitting there. And this year, I think it's a little bit different for Kanaan. He's in a McLaren car. So all month of May, we've seen the fastest cars are Ganassi and McLaren. If I find a prop bet that says, will a Ganassi or McLaren car win this race, I'd jump all over that, because I think those cars and those teams have been a cut above the rest. They've had the fastest cars, so I want to target the guys in those cars. So you're looking at Award, Kanaan, Palou, Dixon, the guys I just mentioned, and then Rosenquist with an outside shot. I do have a Rossi ticket that I got back in March at MGM actually for 22 to 1. That's long gone. I've been picking off some pre-qualification numbers. I have a Rosenquist. They were hanging Ferrucci at 40 to 1. I have that in my pocket as well. So, a lot of the card depends on what you've been building up to this point. But if you're just going from what you see now, I think I would be grabbing, 3 or 4 drivers from that top 9, and they're all at good prices. And then let's see what we can make some money.
Yeah, and like you said, that starting 1 to 9 bet rolls a lot of those guys into that. And you mentioned it's hit every year since 2017. And the major deal there, right? So 2012, we started the DW12 chassis, but from 2017 to 2018, they introduced back to the spec aero kits. Previously, it was Chevy versus Honda manufacturer kits where they can kind of customize those. But now we're back to the spec aero kits ever since 2018. So since 2018, that bet has hit every single time. That at -115 just seems like such incredible value. If you did have to, and I'm gonna throw a curveball here for you, if you did have to take somebody other than TK, outside of the top 10, and or maybe a longer shot that does start inside the top 9 or 10, where would you look?
Yeah, so I mentioned TK, and then my man Will Power sitting out there. He was fastest in the final practice today. by a significant margin, I thought, over several guys. And he's a previous winner. Power's a guy like he's probably between him and betting Dixon top threes. I probably had the most profit on those guys over the last 5-6 years. Power knows his way around this track. Again, he's in a Penske car, so I think it's a long shot. They just haven't shown speed, but he was, like I said, fastest in the final practice, or the second to final practice for Carb Day today. So a Power's a guy that I'd have my eye on and then you can get some double digit odds. Like I said, Sato, Kanan, those guys are all sitting in the teens. So that's kind of where I'd be looking. If you didn't get a long shot before qualifications, like I mentioned, a Ferrucci at the 40. I even saw 80s. Some people sent me some tickets for 80 to 1 on Ferrucci.
I have a 75 on Ferrucci, so yeah.
There you go. So yeah, so people have been grabbing that. Like I got the 40 literally Saturday morning as I started kind of doing some research and seeing all the passing attempts, and he's pretty much passed more people in the last couple of years than anybody, I believe.
Yep.
But he's never started this high. So
yeah, exactly. So Santino Ferrucci, to your point here, he has always started outside the top 10. And he's always finished inside the top 10 in his Indy 500 career. Now he actually starts not only in the top 10, inside the top 5. And when I saw his Fast Friday, if I know you were, but like if you watch the Indy 500 practices and the different sessions, you can watch them on Peacock or NBC, depending on when and where those are. I saw Ferrucci and he made a solo run. So he wasn't in the draft. He wasn't getting a tow. And he was putting up some monster speeds. And there were a couple books that left lines open, and I just had to take a flyer at 75 to 1. And now look what he's done. So yeah, right there with you.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's a dark horse, and I'll be happy if that ticket comes in. And again, that's also cashes that top 9.5 under bet. So
exactly.
Yeah, he's a guy I think is a good bet. That's one where like you could probably get a pretty good top 3. They're still not giving him a ton of respect. I saw him still sitting out there with some 14s, 15s. Not a ton of respect for him. Not a ton of respect for BK Rosenquist. If I had to pick one of those guys that's up really close to up front, that's kind of a double-digit number. Felix is a guy that I had kind of called back in January. I do have a ticket for 35 to 1 for him that I grabbed back in March as well. That he hasn't gone as low as the top guys there. Obviously, Dixon is starting and Award are starting behind them, yet they have shorter odds. So, I would be, if you're looking for some long shots, I'd be picking off in the high teens. You really historically just don't see any 500 winners come in the 20, 30, 40 range. Those are the guys you can find in IndyCar at some other tracks. But this is all about top speed and then precision. And look, 500 miles, you got to have pit stops, got to go right. That's what worries me about Ferrucci. He's in a Foyt car. I just feel like Foyt's gonna do something dumb. Like the team's gonna do something dumb. A tire guy's not gonna get a tire on the. They got the crew's not the same kind of full time crew you see elsewhere.
Exactly.
And he's not even full time driver. So something 500 miles is gonna be 4 or 5 stops. Something crazy could happen. So that's what worries me about him. I think he's a great top 5 bet though, or top 3 bet given his history here. He knows his way around the track, and if the car and the engine can hold up, he'll be there.
Exactly. 100% agree with you. Agree with you there. Santino Ferrucci he has a ton of upside. The question is, how much will the consistency bite him? Not necessarily his consistency, but the team consistency for AJ Foyt racing there. But Mike, thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Running Hot. Where can everybody find you? Tell us what you do as far as betting throughout the year for IndyCar.
Yeah, look, Indy_bet. I put everything out on Twitter. It's pretty much my only main platform that I use right now. I do a ton, like I said, you mentioned the Twitter Spaces. I do with Tony Donahue for Burnout Bets. We do those. We usually do a Twitter Spaces pre-qualifications and then a couple hours before the race. Those have been gaining a ton of popularity. And sometimes we'll do the IndyCar show for Burnout Bets, which we'll probably have a Burnout Bets IndyCar show for the 500 here. So really, Twitter's a spot at Indy_bet, like you said. That's where you can find me. I tweet out my card every single week. I'll give the betting card. I'll give the pre-qual bets. I'll give the post-qual bets, and then I'll give the recap. So you can find it, and I'll be having that all this week as we lead up to race day.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining us, and man, enjoy the best race of the year, the Indy 500. All right, for turn 3 here on Running Hot, please welcome Dale Tanhardt of the Garage Guys. Dale's a good friend of mine. I've been on his show, Dale Center, a couple times this year. I'm very excited to have him here on Running Hot this week. Dale is an esteemed motorsports bettor across all the motorsports, and I'm very, very excited to have him on Running Hot. You can follow Dale in the Action Network app at Dale Tanhardt. Dale, like I said, I know you bet all the motorsports. How excited are you for this weekend. I mean, it's the best racing weekend in the world.
It truly is the best time to be a motorsports fan in the universe, right? I mean, with Monaco, Indy 500, and the Coke 600 all packed in together in one day, Memorial Day weekend, good holiday for everybody to take some time off and enjoy this racing weekend. It's just, there's nothing like it in sports. There really isn't. And the Indy 500, I think, is the cream of the crop. But in all, it is an amazing day for us motorsports fans.
And absolutely. And you told me you were kind of chit-chatting before we hit the record button here. You're going to be in turn 3 in classic Dale style for the Indy 500. How excited are you for that?
Yeah, we've man, I'm so fortunate to have a great family friend who's been going to Indy since the 70s, right? And they've been sitting in turn 3 for an eternity. So it's, in my experience, is going to the Indy 500 and the Brickyard 400 when NASCAR was still hot and heavy there. I've sat in several different places. Turn 3 is the best place to sit. It's the best opportunity to see incredible passes. Yep. And you get to watch ambulances come in and out of the snake pit and pick people up because people are going crazy during the concerts. Yeah. So it's a great spot. And there's really not a bad place to be in Indianapolis for the Indy 500. But if you had to pick, turn 3 is great, and it's the most appropriate here, I feel like, too.
It's also appropriate for the Action Network podcast because it's the action turn between the racing on the track and what you see inside the snake pit itself. So couldn't be more appropriate. But Dale, let's get to these bets. Indy 500. This is so exciting, man. It is the race of the year, like you said, the event of the year. And I know you're ready for it. So lay us with your best bet for the Indy 500.
Man, I think anything involving Alexander Rossi is a slam dunk. This is a guy that is, in my opinion, like if you go back through history, he's a better Arie Luyendyk. Like Arie Luyendyk was amazing in Indianapolis, wasn't great throughout other different types of racetracks, throughout kart, IndyCar, whatever you want to call it. Alexander Rossi is a better version of him. And now it's been kind of a slump for Rossi in his final few years at Andretti, leading into his early portion here at Arrow McLaren. But even in his tough times, the guy was always fast and carrying the Andretti fleet at the Indy 500. If it weren't for 2 wacky races where he had bad luck problems, the guy could have scored 6 top 5s and 7 career starts at the Indy 500, including his 1 win back in 2016. And that was a fuel mileage win. And he's backed that up with continuous races, leading laps, being competitive, being ambitious, balls of steel is the phrase we like to use when it comes to the Indy 500. But the guy truly is remarkable at this racetrack, and I think is a pure talent in this sport. And I think has an amazing shot to win his second Indy 500 because now you're pairing him with the team that brought some of the fastest race cars in 2022, which is Arrow McLaren. And we've already seen through all of our practice sessions through qualifying that Arrow McLaren is legit. Felix Rosenqvist, very, very fast. Pato Award, very, very fast. I love Pato Award, by the way. I have to say it. It's a must bet too. But for a value perspective, I'm glad that Rossi did make the top 6 because I think now you're going to be able to get him 12-1, 13-1, 14-1, all acceptable, all good lines for a guy that has 4 top 5s and 7 starts at Indianapolis in the Indianapolis 500. And he is in a rocket ship, ladies and gentlemen. You have to consider Alexander Rossi at this price. If you can find plus money for a top 5, that is my favorite bet of the weekend to go with an outright between 12-1, 14-1.
Yeah, but I really like that. So Alex Rossi, like you said, if you can get his top 5 at plus money, right? He has in 7 career starts 4 top 5s, and you mentioned it could be closer to 6 top 5s in 7 career Indy 500 starts. This track is a match made in heaven for him. Former Formula One driver as well. So, he's got 2/3 of the legs covered here as far as his experience, an open wheeled guy for sure through and through, and an American. So I know, a lot of Americans will be rooting for an American driver to win. Alexander Rossi, definitely one you can get behind. I like that play a lot. But for your other bet here in turn 3, the most appropriate number here for you, turn 3, Dale Tanhardt, what else do you have for us?
Yeah, look, we were chatting a little earlier, right before we recorded, and we're kind of due for a fuel mileage race. A fuel mileage race creeps up here every 6-7 years, right? Like you think about 2011 with the famous J.R. Hildebrand crash. That was a fuel mileage event.
Oh, yeah.
Then you come back in 2016 with Alexander Rossi. We haven't really had, amongst all these amazing duels we've had that have played out pretty naturally, there have been some breaks where there's been yellow flags come out in the middle of pit stop sequences that make a difference, but we haven't had a fuel mileage event, and we're kind of due for one. So I like a couple underdog bets. I like Connor Daly, who's been sporty in practice. Last 2 years has been very good here, right? So 50-1, I think, is good value for a guy driving for Ed Carpenter. We know Ed Carpenter Racing always brings the heat during qualifying, during race day. We know his teammate Rinus VeeKay is very fast. But if we're talking about a fuel mileage race, I want some guys that are going to gamble and are driving decent race cars, right? Guys that can compete and are willing to roll the dice. So Connor Daly, 50-1. I think you kind of fill both spots there, like good race car, and I think there's potential to gamble for him to get his first win. He's a hometown favorite, sentimental favorite. Got to keep an eye on Connor Daly. I think 50-1, based on speed alone, is a good price. And then it fitting that same mold, there's sometimes been some rookie juju in this race, right? Like I talk about a lot of crazy juju that happens at the Daytona 500 on NASCAR side, but there's nothing like the Indy 500. And if we want to go the crazy route, give me Benjamin Peterson. He's in an AJ Foyt car. Talk about another sentimental favorite. Santino Ferrucci's got speed. Benjamin Peterson's got speed. Give me the rookie 80-1 to win. Maybe take a prop on him for a top 5, top 3. You're going to be able to get it at pretty awesome value for a guy that's in a fast race car. Who knows? AJ Foyt might be rolling the dice to get back into victory lane in the Indy 500 this weekend.
Absolutely. And there's always those dice rolls. And to have a chance, though, on those dice rolls, maybe on a fuel mileage race, you still need a car that's going to be on the lead lap at least, that's going to hang out in lead lap. And so that's where you want speed. Connor Daly has shown speed. Benjamin Peterson, the whole AJ Foyt team has shown speed this year. I mean, impressive speed. So you have to be hanging out in the lead lap for those dice rolls. And the other thing I like about Connor Daly, you mentioned it kind of, you alluded to it a little bit. Not only does he have speed, like he's led here. He led 7 laps last year. He led 40 laps 2 years ago in this same ride, this Ed Carpenter ride. And Ed Carpenter Racing has shown a lot of speed again this weekend. They almost got all of their cars into the Fast 12. They didn't quite, but they were all within close enough. Daly actually had the worst qualifying effort of the 3, but he always has race speed. And he admits he's never been the most amazing qualifier. So you're absolutely right. You got to be on the lead lap. And if what better to be on the lead lap than a guy who is a rookie for a team, this being Benjamin Peterson, that has just shown massive speed this weekend. So I really like those picks. Dale, thank you for taking us through turn 3 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Make sure to tell everybody where they can find you across all your socials and whatever you got.
Yeah, of course. I love our good friends, you, of course, and everybody else over at the Action Network. This is Dale Tanhardt, where I post all my NASCAR picks, which have been terrible recently, but they're there if you want them.
Mine have too, so we're okay.
Hey, yeah, we all go into slumps, but
exactly.
Twitter at Dale Tanhardt, Instagram at Dale Tanhardt, TikTok at Dale Tanhardt, Garage Guys Racing, Garage Guys Fantasy Sports over on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We've got it going on when it comes to motorsports betting across the platform. So I appreciate you for letting me do this, and it just the whole segment. Betting or not, this whole week, goosebumps all the time getting ready for the Indy 500. So
absolutely cannot wait. And yeah, absolutely follow Dale, follow Garage Guys at all those places because they put out incredible content. I mean, you should have seen Dale's drip earlier. He tweeted out, it was something. But Dale Tanhardt, thank you for joining us here in turn 3 on Running Hot. All right, I will take the wheel once again as we head into turn 4. And for turn 4, I'm playing 2 angles that fade some of the top Chevys, the top Chevrolet drivers. So for the first bet here in turn 4, I like Honda to win at -105. Now, if you look at these top Chevy drivers, I talked about Pato O'Ward in turn 1, how he really wasn't happy with the consistency of his race car. Joseph Newgarden just felt way too understeery, and that seemed to get worse. Last week, it seemed to get worse with hotter temperature. And then yesterday, Monday, as we're recording this on Tuesday, Monday, Joseph Newgarden again was not happy with his car in these warmer temperatures. And race day should be even warmer based off of the longer term forecasts into the weekend. So we're looking at 2 of the best drivers in IndyCar, racing Chevys, Pato O'Ward and Joseph Newgarden, not exactly happy with their race cars. So that could knock down Chevy's odds to win a little bit And then Rinus VeeKay, another strong contender. He had issues on Monday. That car had some mechanical gremlins. Haven't had an update yet on what those may have been, but he was not up to speed on that Monday practice session. It's also, Santino Ferrucci. We talked about him a lot. Turn 2, turn 3. He's a fantastic racer. And Benjamin Peterson, of course, Dale Tanhardt gave out as a pick, but those are long shot guys for a reason. Even though they've been super fast, it's very hard to trust those AJ Foyt racing cars, maybe just the consistency of them, also the pit stops, the pit crews. So while they are in play for the win, especially Santino Ferrucci, who absolutely loves his car, you do have to worry about the downside there. Then there's Felix Rosenqvist in the Arrow McLaren car. Felix Rosenqvist really hasn't been a contender typically in the Indy 500. He's made 4 career starts, 2 of them with Ganassi, which is absolute top tier equipment, and then 2 of them with Arrow McLaren, which, is maybe just the smallest step behind Ganassi right now. But he only has 1 top 5 finish in the Indy 500 in those 4 career starts. It was just a 4th place finish. Otherwise, he typically has not been a contender. In fact, all of his other finishes are outside the top 10. There's some other top Chevys that could be in play. Maybe a Tony Kanaan, Alexander Rossi. I do like those guys, but we have kind of downgraded a lot of the guys that are near the top of the board in the Chevys. So as a result, that means we could look towards Honda and all those Ganassi cars. The Honda Ganassi, Chip Ganassi racing cars are very strong. We've obviously talked a lot about Alex Palou, but all of his teammates are strong. Scott Dixon's an Indy 500 winner. Takuma Sato, a 2-time Indy 500 winner. Marcus Ericsson, your defending Indy 500 champion. So Alex Palou, I do make the race favorite, but his other 3 teammates have combined for 4 Indy 500 wins and have all been incredibly fast. So you got to think Honda is in a very strong position here with the Ganassi cars, but there's more. Andretti Autosports teammates Colton Herta and Kyle Kirkwood, they both like their race cars. And I mean, Kyle Kirkwood, even at one point last week prior to qualifying, said he felt like his AutoNation Honda was the car, maybe the car to beat, or maybe there isn't a better car out there than his AutoNation Honda. He said that in an interview. He said he loves his car in the slipstream, right? That draft, the toe that we talk about. So he says he has a really good slipstream race car. And then, of course, when we talk Andretti Autosport, we got to talk about that technical alliance with Meyer Shank Racing. And that means Simon Pagenaud, who we talked about before, is an Indy 500 winner, definitely likes his race car, and his teammate, Helio Castroneves, the 4-time winner at the Indianapolis 500, going for win number 5, which would be an all-time record, right? He has the tied all-time record. He would be solo all-time record as the only person ever to become a 5-time winner. Remember, he won this race 2 years ago with this very team, Meyer Shank Racing. So that is my first bet in turn 4 here. I do like Honda to win at -105. And for the second bet, I'm going to be backing some top Chevy long shots, right? So that comes with kind of downgrading these top tier Chevys, or who we would normally consider the top tier Chevys. We've mentioned with, Joseph Newgarden. We mentioned Pato O'Ward, Rinus VeeKay, some potential issues there. It's maybe hard to trust those AJ Foyt cars. So, even a guy like Scott McLaughlin, I think, is just not quite there yet at Indy. He's made 2 starts at the Indy 500, no finishes better than 20th. And I don't know if that car is quite there yet. And the driver is quite there yet at the Indianapolis 500. So who are these longer shot Chevys? Well, Connor Daly, he's 12-1. Graham Rahal, who is now substituting in for the injured Steph Wilson in the Dreyer Reinbold Racing second car there, is 20-1. Ed Carpenter, 25-1. Ryan Hunter-Reay, 30-1. And Benjamin Peterson, 40-1, I think are all playable as top Chevy long shots. I mean, Connor Daly, we talked about him earlier in some of the turns, turn 3 with Dale Tanhardt especially, and he led 47 laps at this race over the last 2 years in this very race car, this Ed Carpenter Racing race car. Graham Rahal was in the contention for the win 2 years ago when a tire fell off after a pit stop. That was with his Rahal Letterman Lanigan race team, but now he's substituting in for Dreyer Reinbold, and Dreyer Reinbold knows how to run at the front of these races. Graham Rahal has been in contention for wins. He could be the top Chevy here. Ed Carpenter owns, of course, Ed Carpenter Racing, and like Connor Daly, Ed Carpenter has led laps at the Indy 500. He's won poles at the Indy 500. He's been in contention for the win for the Indy 500. He certainly has the ability and the car to finish as the top Chevy. Ryan Hunter-Reay, what more do I need to say about this guy? He is an Indy 500 winner, an IndyCar Series championship winner, and now he has come back to the IndyCar Series to race in the Indy 500 this year in that one-off with Dreyer Reinbold Racing. And now he has Graham Rahal as his teammate. He absolutely has an opportunity to finish as top Chevy. And then, of course, Benjamin Peterson in that AJ Foyt racing car may actually have the fastest car of all of these drivers I just named. I mean, he was the one who put it inside the top 12 in qualifying. Very fast race car, 40-1. So they're all playable with small bets. If you want to throw a 10th of unit here or maybe up to a quarter unit there on some of these drivers, it gives you a few drivers to root for on race day. And, that's the fun of this. So, sure, we all want to make money, but we also want to have some fun while we bet and watch the Indy 500. So I like sprinkling a lot of these top Chevy long shots, especially with some concerns about the performance of some of the favored Chevys. So that is my second bet where we're fading kind of these top Chevys, these top tier top Chevys in turn 4. So we have made it all the way through 4 turns, 1 lap at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That means we need to drive into victory lane. My victory lane pick, none other than Alex Palou. I do think he absolutely has the car to beat. He is 6-1 pretty much across the board. It doesn't matter where you look, but you can get him 6-1 at BetMGM. Alex Palou, for me, is the driver to beat this year. Again, I said I noticed it right off the bat in April. I think Alex Palou really loved his race car, put some incredibly consistent lap times down in that April test, and they have been that way all month of May as well. Incredibly consistent, great in the draft. If you watch him on track in these practice sessions, he is easily able to slice and dice his way through traffic. So, Alex Palou, at 6-1, I tend not to like to bet favorites in the Indy 500, but I think this is a year where if you do take some longer shots, and I do have some longer shots on my card, I think you can supplement it with a race favorite in this particular case, because Alex Palou to me has looked like the strongest car all month of May. So that is going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to this special Indianapolis 500 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. I want to thank my guests again, and thank you all for listening, and we'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.